Fixing the impossible. And it's out of the Gospel of John, chapter 6, starting at verse 5. Fixing the impossible. John chapter 6, starting at verse 5. It says, this is when Jesus ministered to the 5,000. Well, it says 5,000 men, so there's women on top of that and children on top. So it's could be anywhere from like 7,500 to like 15,000 people. And verse 5 says, so when Jesus then lifted up his eyes, he saw a great company come unto him. He said unto Philip, when shall we buy bread that these may eat? Interesting. Philip is minding his own business, and Jesus turns to him and says, well, how can we buy bread to feed all these people? This is very important to us, because it happens, if we are spiritually aware, it happens frequently. That God will say, okay, you see that problem? What are you going to do about it? Very good. Now, your first response, well, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved in that. He didn't ask you. He said, what are you going to do about it? So, and this he said to prove him, for he knew what he would do. Jesus knew what he was going to do, but he was proving Philip. By which I mean, he was doing something in Philip. Of course, he was going to feed the 5,000. We know that. But he's also interested in his disciples, and maturing his disciples, and his disciples becoming stronger spiritually. Verse 7, Philip answered him, 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. 200 pennies, $2, sounds like not much. No. A penny's worth was a day's wages. So 200 days' wages, like 9 months of the year, is what an average person have to pay to feed all these people. So it's not a small amount. So Philip is looking in the natural and he's saying, well, in the natural, this is impossible. Can't do it. I can't do it. We can't do it. Verse 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, says unto him, there is a lad here which has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? So there's a spark happens in his spirit, and he says something that a lot of people wouldn't say, because it sounds foolish. This little boy over here has 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Now, in the natural, you're going to look and say, well, how's that going to feed 5, 10, 15,000 people? 5 loaves, 2 fishes. How's that supposed to get the job done? He's not asking that question. He said, we have something here. We have something, but how's that going to get the job done? Now, this is really important. Why is it important? Because we never have everything that we need to get the job done. You're always going to come up a dollar short and a day late. Okay, it's just, that's the way it works in the natural. And that's why we get frustrated. It's because, well, I was that close. But close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So we're stuck with the problem. Well, but I can't get it done. I can't get it done. And that's exactly right. God brings us into situations that we can't get done. Why does he do that? Does he do that to frustrate us? No, he doesn't do that to frustrate us. He does that to bring us into a situation where we trust him for the supernatural. So the first thing that happens is we get the vision. These people need to be fed. And in this case, it came directly from Jesus. But it can come to you and it's like, we need to do something now. We need to do something about Muslims getting saved. Yeah, we need to pray for them when you get that, We need to do something about the poor. We need to do something about whoever. And it's God that put that in your heart. Why? Because we're so busy living our lives. Why would we care about anybody but ourselves? So when it comes, know that it's coming from God. And then the next thing you have to do is assess, well, what's it going to take? It's important. You don't ignore the size of the problem. You need to identify the size of the problem. And in this case, Philip himself said, well, 9 months worth of salary, might get the job done, but probably not. And then Andrew says, well, we have a small boy here. So we see the problem, we see the dimensions of the problem, and then the next thing is Andrew identifies, we got a little boy here that has 5 loaves and 2 fishes. That's our resources. That's what we have to work with. Guess what? The solution, my solution, and the problem just aren't matching up here. This is not going to work. But still, he says, well, this is what we got to work with. Actually, we don't have anything. This small boy has 5 loaves and 2 fishes. So in the natural, that looks selfish. It's like, you're going to take that little boy's food to try to feed someone else? In the natural, it may look like that, but that isn't what God's doing. And the next thing is very interesting. Jesus said, make the men sit down. Make them all sit down. This is in other places, sit down by 50s and 100s. So this is interesting because God is now bringing structure and order. He says, okay, we need to define it. We need to have people sit down. Because if people are milling around, you can't get them properly fed. So get them all sit down. Make the men sit down. So there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. And this is the part that's really important. Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. So he takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. That couldn't get the job done, and he breaks it. Usually when you break something, you got halves, but that isn't exactly how it worked with Jesus, because clearly he had enough loaves and fishes to feed 5,000 men plus women and children. But he didn't just do it himself. He gave it, and then he gave it to his disciples, and they gave it to the people. That's not an accident. The problem was such that God had to bring an answer to it, and he did. Jesus brought an answer. He broke the fish, and he gave it to his disciples. The disciples did the same thing he did, because clearly when you break a fish in half, you've got 2 halves, but it's like, that's still not going to feed 5,000. So they kept doing exactly what they saw him do. They followed the example of Jesus, and then they gave to the people. Jesus didn't give directly to the people. He gave it to the disciples, who gave to the people. Verse 12. When they were filled, he said to the disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing may be lost. You mean there's going to be something left? Absolutely. Verse 13. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Now consider, small 5 loaves, 2 fishes, and then 12 baskets. It doesn't make sense. But it doesn't have to make sense. When God is working, it never makes sense. Why? Because you know what? We trust God to do the natural things. But we don't trust him for the supernatural things. Now, and that is totally upside down. Why? Because he expects us to take care of the natural things. But he expects us to trust him for the supernatural. For the things you can't get done. And he calls you to do. He doesn't call you to frustrate you. He calls you, it's a promotion. He's calling you up to a higher level. Because his disciples in the process, they did the same thing Jesus did. They broke the bread. They had the privilege of doing the same thing that God incarnate did. He gave it, okay, now you guys, you do the same thing, and then give to everybody. They had the privilege of doing the very same thing that Jesus did. Saw the loaves and the fishes parted. Now it's interesting, you know, they think, well, it's the scraps left, there's no big deal, we can just leave it there. Nope. Pick it up. Now you would have thought, oh, you know, you look around, see a few scraps. When he picked it up, there was 12 baskets. That's a lot of food. Now we say, well, I don't want to eat that. Well, even if you decide you didn't, they probably would. But even if they didn't, that's still going to feed livestock. That still has a value. And you know what? People just think, well, I use it up and throw it away. Just think, well, there's some left in it. It doesn't matter. Just throw it away. You know, that is how God expects us to treat his goods. What you're throwing away is you're throwing away value. My wife used to laugh at me the way I go through a toothpaste, because after it looks like it's all empty, I take something flat and I push it out, and then we got three or four more uses in the toothpaste. He said, well, why should I throw it away? There's still more use in it. You know, I say, well, it doesn't matter. Well, then why don't you throw it when it's halfway full? Why don't you just throw it out when it's full? Then keep the second one for yourself. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And so he said, okay, take care of the results. Initiative is good, finishative is better. Take care of the whole job, not just part of it. Therefore they gathered them together, filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. Something as simple as feeding 5,000 people, but supernatural, doing it with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. So I want to recap. First thing that happens, God shows you a problem. You can't solve it. How are we going to feed these people? And our response is, well, I don't know. I don't know, because looking at the size of the problem, when I understand the size of the problem, people like to ignore problems. Oh, I can solve it, and they don't even understand the nature of the problem. How do you expect to get anything done? That's not faith, that's foolishness. That 200 pennies worth is not going to get in 9 months worth of salary, just probably won't get the job done. And then Andrew comes and says, but we have a boy here. 5 loaves, 2 fishes. Is that any good? Jesus doesn't even answer. Just give me the fish. Give me the loaves. And he starts breaking them, gives them, said, sit them all down. Organize the problem. Identify the problem. Quantify the problem. Organize the problem. And then trust God. Look at the resources you have, and then trust God to multiply what's there. We want to do what God does, but why would you want to do that? That's supernatural. If you could do that, you'd be God too. And people do want to be God. Mm-hmm. Smart thing is, realize you're not God. That's His work. You want to be more than a conqueror? Let the conqueror do the work. That's the whole idea. And when he finally came to that place, it comes down to the point, it's that, Lord, I've done all my part. I've identified the problem. I've quantified the problem. I've organized the problem. I've done all that I can, and now I need you to do the supernatural. People too often just look at the problem and say, I can't solve that. Well, that's lazy. That's intellectually and spiritually lazy. And it's acting like a spoiled brat. And you're not gonna get the help of God doing that. You got to face the problem. You got to work through the problem. Then you got to look at what you've got and say, God, this is the problem. This is what I got to work with it. Now I need your direction. Once you've done your part, then God has no problem doing His part. He loves to take care of His children, but He sure doesn't like a spoiled brat attitude. That's what we do. We get spoiled, but really we want to focus on, yes, Lord. Was it your problem? As soon as God tells you it is. I'm too busy. I'm too busy taking care of my family and my husband. I'm too busy taking care of my household. I'm too busy taking care of my job. I got to fix my car. I don't have time for that stuff. And God says, who says so? Who says so? It's all about prayer. It's all about getting into the presence of God. It's asking Him what He wants you to do. In this case, it was feed 5,000. When you get with the program, you will see the supernatural. When you do your part, you will see the supernatural. And that's my message today.